Good morning. So Flat Earth Banjo responded to an email of mine from way back in August, which I sent to him because he brought up another emergency landing, this time from Copenhagen in Denmark to Singapore, which landed in Moscow due to a medical emergency. So here's my email, which you can pause if you want to read it, but I make the same 2 points I've been making in previous videos to him, which I'll put links to in the description. So point number one, which has been told by pretty much everyone, stop using Google Maps to plot flight paths on a globe. They're just wrong. The shortest path between 2 points on a globe is a Great Circle route. You can either use Google Earth or the measure distance tool in Google Maps. Just don't use the path that Google Maps draws for you when it's trying to sell you a flight. He seems really intent on attacking a straw man, which I guess isn't all that uncommon for flurfers. And point number two, if he's going to make an argument that this emergency landing doesn't make any sense on the globe, then he really needs to tell us where he thinks it should have landed. So something along the lines of, if Earth is a globe, then it should have landed in Turkey. It landed in Moscow, therefore Earth is not a globe. Right, so here's the screenshot I sent him. The blue line is the flight path that Google Flights draws for you, while the black line is using the measure distance tool. And this is the Great Circle route. So this is what you should be comparing the actual flight path to. And here it is mapped properly on Google Earth. And as I told him in my email, the route as it is gets within about 150 miles of Moscow. So it's already the perfect emergency landing spot. I also mentioned that the flight from earlier this year that was effectively hijacked by the Belarusian government. So when you factor in that commercial airlines were probably avoiding Belarusian airspace at the time, then this is probably what the flight path should look like. And that takes you pretty much straight over Moscow. So well done, Eddie. You couldn't get a better emergency landing spot on the globe if you tried. Anyway, that was my email to him, and he responded in video form, and boy howdy was it full of crazy shit. He starts off with a few minutes of just sort of general incredulity about the various speeds of things, like the rotation of the Earth, the orbital speed of the Earth around the Sun, the speed of the solar system in the Milky Way galaxy, and then the speed of the galaxy itself with respect to the cosmic background radiation. And I guess it's not surprising that he balls up the math here as well. He's off by a factor of 1,000. So 33.6 million miles a day times 73 days is not 2.4 million miles, it's 2.4 billion miles with a B. So in his video, he conveniently cuts off the second half of the email, which explains the Copenhagen to Singapore flight, and brings up a different flight from Tokyo to Washington. But then he goes off on this really wild tangent. Have a listen.
So this is what I do. For example, this is a flight from Washington, D.C. to Tokyo. It's a ANA Airlines, Japanese Airlines flight. And this is the route of this flight according to Google Maps. Now, you guys remember that Google, doesn't matter if it's Google Maps, Google Earth, Google Satellite, it's all a CIA agency. And when you talk CIA, you're talking about Jesuits, because CIA imitates what the Jesuits do. And I believe that CIA is 100% a Jesuit too.
In 2003, Google got its first NSA and first CIA contract that we know of. But Google's origins actually go back to the military. This was a time when the intelligence community was predicting that people would move together online and aim to track and identify those people. So Google was actually born out of NSA and CIA research grants.
Holy shit, dude. It's just spherical geometry. It's not complicated, and not everything has to be a conspiracy. So you can go buy a globe and use a piece of string to plot the flight routes between two locations. Or you can use one of the other Great Circle mappers online. You don't have to use Google. Anyway, the point of this Tokyo to Washington flight is that it does actually follow a route pretty close to what Google Flights draws. So pretty much straight across the Pacific, nowhere near Alaska. So obviously, Great Circle routes must be a CIA conspiracy, and Google Flights is actually showing you the true flight path. The problem you have, Eddie, though, is that in your previous videos about emergency landings, your logic is always that the route on the Gleason's map is the true flight path, and that's why the planes make emergency landings where they do. You always seem to mess up the Great Circle routes, though. Anyway, back to Tokyo to Washington. So here you can see that the Great Circle route, which is the one in red, is closer to the actual route than the route on the AE map, which is the one in green. So if we follow the same logic from your emergency landing videos, then obviously this flight doesn't make sense on a flat Earth, right? Anyway, so why is this flight taking this really wide path that doesn't match either the globe or the flat Earth? Jet streams. Yay, well done, Eddie. And I know you know what jet streams are, because when I pointed out that the Sydney to Santiago flight takes such a wide deviation from the straight line route, you said that they do it because the jet streams get you there faster than going in a straight line. But then I pointed out that on the return leg from Santiago back to Sydney, they take basically the same route. And you just went really, really quiet. Why is that? Did the jet streams just conveniently go in the other direction that day or something? All right, so for this Tokyo to Washington DC flight, obviously they deviate from the Great Circle route because of the prevailing winds. In fact, on the Wikipedia page for jet streams, they specifically show a flight from Japan to the United States, taking advantage of the jet streams flying east and then flying the Great Circle route when they go back to Japan. But have a look at the flight that Eddie shows here. So ANA2 from Tokyo to Washington on Flight Radar 24. And then the same flight on FlightAware, ANA2. So what does he do? He claims that the Google flight route is the actual flight route, and the Great Circle route is wrong.
Uh-oh, what's going on here? It really looks like the one on Google Maps. This is the flight route according to Flight Radar and according to the ANA, the Japanese Airlines.
But gee, Eddie, since you only looked at the Tokyo to Washington flights, which do follow the jet streams, I wonder what happens when we look at the Washington to Tokyo routes. Let's see if they go through Alaska. All right, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And what do you know? They all go through Alaska, just like the Great Circle route. So why didn't you show the return leg, Eddie? It's very, very interesting. All right, so there's one more point I want to hit while I'm here. Eddie put out another video about flight routes a few days ago. And it's one of those really silly ones where he picks 2 random airports in the Southern Hemisphere. And if there isn't a non-stop flight between them, it's apparently proof of a flat Earth. He doesn't give any thought to whether the route makes any commercial sense. I mean, if Eddie wants a flight between 2 random cities, then God damn it, it has to exist. So the flight he's chosen here is Tahiti in the middle of the Pacific to Quito in Ecuador. Neither of them are transportation hubs, so I'm not exactly surprised there isn't a direct flight between them. So Eddie thinks to go from Tahiti to Quito, you absolutely must go through the Northern Hemisphere, and this is therefore proof that the Gleason's map is the true map of the Earth. So in his example, he goes from Tahiti up to San Francisco, usually down to Houston, and then from Houston down to Quito. Now, Mr. 42 has already done a great video on this, which I'll link to in the description, but I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to have a hypothetical race from Tahiti to Quito. Eddie's going to go via the Northern Hemisphere, and I'm going to stay in the Southern Hemisphere, and we'll see who gets there first. I'm even going to give Eddie a little advantage. So instead of going via San Francisco, he can go via Los Angeles, which should be a couple of hours quicker. All right, so here's his first leg, Tahiti to LAX. If you average out both legs, it comes to 8 hours. From LAX to Houston, it's 3 hours, 15 minutes one way, and then 3 hours, 45 minutes the other. So we'll say 3.5 hours for that one. And then Houston to Quito, both legs take about 5 hours and 10 minutes for a total of 16 hours and 40 minutes. So my flight route is going to go from Tahiti to Easter Island, from Easter Island to Lima, and then from Lima up to Quito. All right, let's see how long it takes. Right, so the first leg is from Tahiti to Easter Island, and this is where reality kicks in. So because of the pandemic, this route isn't currently operating. This article was posted in July 2020 saying they're going to start flying again in first quarter 2021. But if you look at this recent article, so LATAM airline group struggles to restore international network, you can see that this hasn't happened yet. In any case, if you take the average of both legs, as given here, you'll get a flight time of 5 hours and 35 minutes. So next leg is from Easter Island to Lima in Peru, and here's where some commercial realities kick in. So obviously this route wasn't profitable for the airline, so they canned it in early 2013. LATAM still fly to Easter Island, but now only from Santiago. Anyway, this flight did exist at one point, so I'm still going to use it. Again, if you take the average of the legs, you get a flight time of 5 hours and 15 minutes. Now from Lima, Peru up to Quito in Ecuador, you get an average of 2 hours and 15 minutes. All right, so here's the comparison of the two routes. So Eddie's going via the northern hemisphere and taking 16 hours and 40 minutes, while I'm going in the southern hemisphere and taking only 13 hours and 5 minutes. So Eddie, why is it 3.5 hours faster to go via the southern hemisphere? Can you also see that I could have made it so much worse for you if the race was from Tahiti to Lima instead of to Quito? In that case, I would have beaten you by 7 hours instead of 3.5. So give it up, Eddie. Flight routes destroy your shitty map.